Thank you, Colonel. And thank you, the two deans that I've already met, Dean Wells and Dean Kim, and President Bogart, for having me here. If you can't hear me, please raise your hand and I'll try to talk louder. The smoke that's been in the air for the last few days here has my allergy just totally cramped up. To start out, I again would like to acknowledge, and thank you for the introduction, Colonel. I'd like to acknowledge all the veterans that are here. I've dealt with each one of the branches, including the Coast Guard, which wasn't here today. But since we see a lot of them, the Navy, I understand that they like to say that the Marines are a department of the Navy. And I have some Marine friends who said that it's the men's department. The Air Force is the Air Force. They have the most intelligent enlisted men anywhere in the military because they sit around and drink coffee and send their officers out to fight. I can't say that about the Army. Please bear with me. I'd like to read something that I happened to see in my research, and I think it pretty well stands up to scrutiny. I don't know who wrote it, I have no idea. But it describes a veteran. It says, I stood up, I showed up, I stepped forward, I raised my right hand, I stood in the gap, I walked in the fire. I did not run, I did not hide, and I did not dodge. I did not evade. Consequently, I have nothing to prove. No one to convince. Those that matter already know, and those who don't never will. And that's a very, very true statement. So, again, thank you very much. That's my speech. No. I am not a speaker. I'm a talker. And I just wanted to comment, this is the biggest group of people I've stood in front of that didn't have weapons in a long time. I hope you don't have weapons anyway. But you will see a lot of vets around campus here. I've been working with Colonel Hibbs, trying to get them organized and support the best we can. It's my honor and great pleasure to do so. But give me a little bit of my history. I can't speak to the Marine Corps basic training or the Navy basic training or the Air Force basic training, only my own. And I don't know what they're doing today, but I can tell you what they did in 1968. The year after graduating from college, I got this letter that said the U.S. government on it. And I opened it and found out that I'd been invited to join probably the largest fraternity in this country, U.S. Army. And this was not a part of my career progression in what I was working at. But short of sawing off my trigger finger, I figured I'd better show up. So I went down to the examining center where I ran into about 300 other sad souls and got into a room. They told us to strip to our skivvies and go into the next large room. Well, once there, we were poked and prodded, looked at. Our teeth were counted, our eyes were counted, and even checked. Colonel Hibbs said that when he went through his examination, they had one guy stand on a table and clap his hands. The people had turned around, passed the hearing test. And I don't doubt that either. But finally we went to, got toward the end of the line. We came up to two medics. They asked us to drop our drawers, put our hands on our knees, and open our mouth. Okay. One medic took a flashlight and shined it down our throat. The other one looked behind us to see if he could see a spot of light. If not, we were in. Then we went to talk to a doctor who asked us rather personal questions. If you answered those right, you were in. Please excuse my throat. Those that were healthy enough were ordered to report back at 7 o'clock the next week, where we all assembled, names were taken, noses were counted, and they loaded us into a couple of very old, rickety, non-air conditioned, non-spring loaded school buses. And we took off about 8 o'clock in the morning for Fort Polk, Louisiana. I was working in Shreveport at the time. After a short and not too nasty ride, we arrived at Fort Polk about 1 o'clock in the morning. So you can see this was not a short trip. They loaded us off, herded us into a mess hall, which we found out was properly named, and fed us a meal. After that, we went to a supply room. They issued us a wool blanket, 1 sheet, and 1 pillow. Now, you got to remember, this is June in South Louisiana. I think it got down to about 85 that night. Herded us over to a barracks building, which had several windows, 2 doors, a bathroom, a shower, and no beds. So we slept on the floor the first night in a wool blanket. That was a lot of fun. That really was a lot of fun. Next morning they got us up at 5:30. We went to bed at about 3. Took us back over to have another meal, which they referred to as SOS. Now I don't know if anybody has ever tasted SOS, but technically it's cream beef, chipped beef on toast. But I'll call it something on a shingle just because of the audience I have here. The rest of the day we stood in lines for one thing or another. We got assigned to a real barracks with real bunks for a change. We got some lovely haircuts. We were issued clothing, and we filled out forms. This went on for 2 or 3 days. We found out we were a very diverse group. We had hippies, farmers, city slickers, mechanics, high school dropouts, criminals, college boys, 1 merchant seaman, believe it or not, and 1 college professor. He taught English at the University of Arkansas. We came from diverse places as Alabama, Arkansas, Louisiana, Tennessee, Illinois, and Mississippi. So we were not exactly the same. But as soon as we hit the basic training company, we quickly found out that we were no longer individuals. The Army's whole purpose was to make sure we knew that. We were taught how to stand, when to stand, how to turn left, how to turn right, how to turn around. Once that was perfected, we went on to better steps. We learned to do how to walk, when to walk, how to turn left, walking, how to turn right, walking, how to turn around, walking, and of course, when to stop walking. We learned how to wear our new clothes, how to put them together, how to hang them in a wall locker, how to fold them up in a foot locker, and they were very serious about this. We were inspected 2 or 3 times a day. We also learned how to mop and wax the floor, and the fine art of the electric buffer. We also learned how to ride the electric buffer. That was when the drill sergeant wasn't looking. We learned how to clean a latrine in the shower, and how to find the drill sergeant's favorite item, dust. And since there was no air conditioning in the barracks, the windows were always open and there was always dust. Never failed. Then we started physical training. Very, very important in the military. Whether you stand a lot, sit a lot, or in my case, run a lot, you had to be in top physical shape. After the mile runs, we learned the proper way to do a push-up, proper way to do a set-up, and 10 other excruciating little outfits called the Dirty Dozen, which we performed every morning. When we ran our mile, it was not in shorts and tennis shoes like they do now. It was in fatigue uniforms and combat boots. That's probably why we only had to run 1 mile instead of 2 that they do today. After all of this, for a couple of weeks, then the fun really began. They decided to issue us an M14 rifle. Most of you have seen the M16 rifle, which weighs 8.7 pounds fully loaded. The M14 weighed 10.8 pounds. It was a little bit harder to carry around, and you felt those extra 2 pounds after a while. They also had fun with these things as far as a punishment apparatus. One of the things was to hold the thing over your head and run around the barracks, yelling, "How glad I am to be here." The other thing is, if you really messed up, they would hold your hands out straight, lay that M14 across the top of them, and stand you out in the hot sun until they got tired of it. If you really messed up, they'd do the same thing in a squat position. Never had to do that, but I watched it and decided it was not a lot of fun. Once we got the rifle, we learned to take it apart, learn what the parts were, what the parts were for, what they did, how to clean it, and how to put it together. Once we had that down pat, we did it blindfolded, just so we could do it in the dark. And we used to have contests in the barracks, blindfold each other, see how fast we could take it apart, put it back together again, and who won. Usually it was for a pack of cigarettes or a candy bar, which we couldn't eat anyway. Oh, listen, this thing had a serial number, which we had to memorize. It was not a simple memorization because the number of digits in this serial number was higher than the national debt. And you didn't get into the mess hall unless you could spout this number back out to the drill sergeant. Okay. So we also learned how to hold that rifle, how to pull the trigger, how to sight it, and other odds and ends about it, how to use it with a bayonet. When the drill sergeants figured out that the majority of us knew which end of the rifle the bullet came out of, then we went to the rifle range. And we employed our new learned walking skills to get out there, 2 miles out and 2 miles back. The next 5 weeks we learned rifle safety, how to zero the rifle and tune it in to exactly your size of face, and how to shoot live ammunition. At the same time, we learned all the positions you could shoot from. The foxhole position, standing position, kneeling position, sitting position, and my favorite, the squatting position, which immediately turned into a sitting position as soon as I pulled the trigger. And it was very stable in the squatting position. Fill our spare time, we had classes in military justice, first aid, and CBR, which is NBC training now. It was chemical, radiological, and biological, how to do it and how to protect yourself from it. We also had field sanitation. And we got familiar with radios, military radios, how to talk on them, how to turn them on. Landmines, barbed wire, how to dig a foxhole, how to set up a pup tent, and also familiarize ourselves with hand grenades, tear gas, and sea rations. Of the three, the sea rations were definitely the best. After 7 weeks of this, we were very strictly tested. It was a hands-on test more than anything else, how to perform the different things that we had learned during basic training. If you graduated, you were in luck. You became a soldier. If you didn't, you recycled back and started all over again. But they weren't going to let you out just because you were stupid. The next stop was AIT, which is Advanced Individual Training. This was another 8 weeks in your particular specialty, the one that the Army wants you to go into, not you. There were different posts, and what you went into depended on what it was. Artillery was Fort Sill, Oklahoma. Infantry was at several posts, including Fort Jackson, Fort Pope, where I was, and Fort Benning. Fort Knox, if you were going to be a tanker, you went up there. I think Signal was at Fort Stewart, and MPs was at Fort Gordon, etc., etc., etc. And I've missed a page here. I hope I didn't leave it at home because we're in trouble if I did. There it is. The specialties in the Army, there's 35 different branches within the Army alone. Some of these have 14 subspecialties in them. So 8 weeks later, you got an MOS, which was a military occupation specialty designator, if you passed that particular course. Otherwise, you became a duty soldier and you swept streets and dug latrines, did all the dirty work. My first one was infantry, and I stayed at Fort Polk for that. This designator for infantry is 11B. In the vernacular of the Army, it's 11 Bravo. We called it 11 Booby Rat, or 11 Bullet Stopper was my favorite. Then came assignment with a troop unit or a major unit. I applied for and was qualified to go to paratroop school, which was at Fort Benning, Georgia. It's 3 weeks. Pretty tough 3 weeks. The first week they separated the men from the boys. The second week they separated the men from the idiots. And the third week they let the idiots jump. And that's the cleanest paratrooper joke I know. Or have ever heard. After that I was assigned to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, where there was 13 weeks and Phase 1 Special Forces training, followed by a condensed, which is supposed to have been 8 weeks, MOS producing school in military intelligence. Gave me another MOS of 35 Foxtrot, which is intelligence analyst. In other words, I didn't have to be smart, I just had to be able to identify somebody who was. And next stop was the Republic of Vietnam. As you can tell, veterans have a whole lot of different experiences than the average civilian does. All the vets have the same problems when they want to come back into the civilian life. 28% have very serious problems. And if you get into a combat veteran, it goes up to 44%. There's historically and statistically 3 main groups of psychosocial problems that they will face. Most serious is PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And this is the ones where you see people going out and shooting up or something, shooting at the cops, doing all kinds of other things, drinking very heavily, going to drugs. And that's just part of it. There are a lot of ways to just diagnose this problem, but there's no single cure. Everyone is different. Second thing is panic attacks. These can be set off by any kind of a reminder of what they faced on the battlefield. And the most common one is what all civilians enjoy. They think it's pretty and impressive, is a fireworks display. I have seen veterans run from fireworks displays. I used to hit the ground every time a car was backfire. So I know what that's like. Third is flashbacks. These can occur if any kind of sight, smell, stressful situation. Socially, a lot of vets have trouble fitting back into the civilian world. They have trouble talking about their experiences to anyone because they know that if you weren't there, you can't possibly understand what they're talking about. Any other problem, they have trouble discussing because they've always been told you have to handle your problems yourself. And that can really build up on people. They don't care to discuss their experiences, again, because unless you're there, you can't really understand it. Another problem is hypervigilance, and I've done this myself. The veteran comes back from the combat zone and he's trained to look for anything that's out of the ordinary. So he'll walk into a room the size of this, and the first thing he'll look for is the number of doors and windows he can use as an exit from that area. It just, we can't help it. We always do it. He should never let his guard down because that could cost him his life also. The only, vets are only looking for acceptance and integration back into the civilian world. Returning Vietnam vets were spit on, called dirty names, and generally hated just because they were in the military. I experienced that also. Thank goodness this has changed since Vietnam. Most veterans are heartily welcomed back into the States. My son, when he came back from Kuwait, he was had his dinner bought. One guy gave him a $20 bill. Several people shook hands with him, and I'm so glad to see that that happened. The attitude is greatly improved, but it still takes time for the veteran to adjust back into civilian life. Veterans don't ask for pity, but a little patience go a long way in helping them. And I've got a few more minutes here. I'd like to give you a little bit of history, those of you who are history buffs. You see in front of you there, two pieces of paper. One is white and the other one has a colored symbol on it. Who is the first one that can tell me the difference other than the color between the two symbols, the one on the flag and the one on the seal? It's almost looking like looking for Kilroy, isn't it? Took me a while too. Speed things up, but I know nobody really cares. Oh, you found it? All right.
The flag on the right on the seal is completely different than the, well, there's switch kind of. The American flag is on the left in the seal, and on the right on the flag.
The two flags are switched. The one on the one on the flag there, the Army flag, is older than the Army seal. At that time, your regimental colors would be on the right, and your nationality would be on the left. Also, I noticed that there's only 12 stars showing on these flags. I never have figured out why that is. I haven't been able to find it anywhere. But looking at the symbol, excuse me, a lot of people don't understand this. Of course, you see the cuirass, the armor, Roman armor. On the right hand, or your left hand side is the American flag where it's supposed to be, and the Army flag on the other side. Crisscross, in the middle is a sword, a Roman sword. On the left is a pike. On the other side is a bayoneted rifle. On the lower left, you'll see a cannon with 3 cannonballs. On the right is a mortar with 3 mortar shells. And above it is a snake wrapped around the phrase, "This will defend." Anybody know what the little red thing is on the end of the sword? Yes, sir.
Is it the Liberty Cap?
Basically, yes. It's called a Phrygian cap. And it was given to Roman slaves to show that they had won their freedom. Just a little bit of trivia. Of course, 1775, June 14th is the birthday of the Army. For you Marine folks, happy birthday for yesterday.
Thank you.
Maybe, I don't know when you guys started. Best I remember, we had to buy you your first boats. Okay, now then, down into it. A lot of people have seen one of the most recognizable things of a military person is the hand salute. But nobody knows where it started. They will tell you in basic training that it had to do with opening the visor on the armor. But that's not true. The only time that a knight wore a visor on his helmet was at the jousts. In wartime, he took that completely off so he could see better. Makes sense. So the British started using this sound that says that there's no weapon in my hand. And this became the British salute among the Army and the Marines. British Navy salutes the same way we do, with the palm of the hand down. Reason being, this came from the old British Navy. They used a lot of tarred ropes to raise their sails and lower them. Consequently, sailors had really filthy hands. And it was sort of against polite community to show a dirty hand to an officer. So they turned it down to where you couldn't see it. And we adopted that as our salute. A little bit of trivia, I love trivia. The actual salute came, well, the first actually written down salute was in 1740 in the British Army. They had really interesting and complex plumed hats. So the old salute was to take your hat off and bow to someone who's superior. They tore up too many hats that way, so they left the hat on and just touched it. So that's where the British hand salute like that came from. Shave tail. Anybody know what a shave tail is? Most people refer to it as a lieutenant, a shave tail lieutenant. And I've heard all kinds of stories of where that came from. But technically, it came from pack mules, the ones that were green and weren't completely trained as to how to carry a pack. They'd shave their tails off so they could tell which ones to try to pack first, because they weren't used to it. But it stuck to the lieutenants also. They didn't know what they were doing either. There's a lot of, I still have a minute or two. There's a lot of phrases, excuse me, that came from the military, and we use it in everyday life. One of them is, I heard it through the grapevine. Now, it's a nice, popular song, or it was when I was young, but it means that you got your information through the telegraph. It was hearing it through the grapevine. Face the music. When an officer was drummed out for cowardice or whatever, he was actually drummed out, and they had a band playing, so he had to face the music as he went outside the post. Murphy's Law, everybody's heard of that. Lieutenant Edward A. Murphy, 1948, working on the rocket sled situation. One of his technicians messed up, and he said, if it can be messed up, it will be. And it became Murphy's Law. First law, there's three of them. Blockbuster. In World War I, the bombs that they had would only destroy a very small area. So they invented a 4,000-pound bomb that would actually tear up a whole city block. Therefore, a blockbuster. Had nothing to do with the movies at the time. Full tilt. Now, somebody going full tilt, that really amazed me. When they were doing the jousting, the knights, they never dropped their spear all the way down until they hit full speed, just before they made contact with each other. So you were going at full tilt. Interesting. Jarhead. Boy, there's a good one. Marines know all about that, right?
Yes, sir.
It was originally referred to as a pack mule, the jarhead. I heard an interesting story. Now, you can tell me if this is true or not. I got this from a Marine Corps Sergeant Major. He said that in the old USS Constitution, on the gun deck, the beams that went across were at 5'7" from the deck. All the sailors were usually below 5'6" in height, but the Marines had to be 5'8" or taller. So you get a new Marine going to his gun, he'd hit his head every time. Jarhead. Leatherneck's another good one. Leatherneck, they did have a leather piece around their necks early on. Most people think it was to protect them from sword cuts. That won't stop a sword. It was actually designed into the uniform so that the Marine would stand straight up and not broke his head. That was what the purpose of it was. I did get that true. The square meal came from the British Navy. Join the Navy and get a square meal. The tables in the gun decks were rectangular and suspended by 4 ropes, so you could pull them up out of the way in any other time. But when you sat down to eat, a round plate wouldn't fit that. So they had square plates, and they wouldn't slide around when the ship was rocking.